Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Take 4 or 5, is it? I promised I wasn't going to do this anymore, but I keep being my usual bumbling self. So here we go. Hopefully we'll get it right today. I'm going to start with the top 10 because, as I explained last week, I'm now having to work. Well, not having to work. I'm now working on Saturdays. So what I'm doing is, let me get this right. All of the sort of the reviews and the top 10 lists are now going to be done on a Saturday because I can pre-record them the week before. Obviously, what I can't pre-record is the activity on the Facebook page because that hasn't happened yet. So that'll all be on a Sunday now. But apart from that, the titles are going to stay exactly the same. I'm just swapping the content about for the last time, I promise you. So, right, today I'm going to start with the top 10. I've been looking forward to getting this one. This is Rick Mallin. Runs a channel called Old AF on YouTube. He's been a member of the group for some months. Mad as a box of frogs, but we fucking love him that way. We just do. If you've not checked out his channel, feel free to do so. You'll see some crazy stuff on there. That prank that you pulled last week in the supermarket over the intercom, Rick, was there anybody there when you actually did that, or was that after hours? I'm just curious. I'll tell you what, because if that's the sort of stuff that goes off there, I'm coming to you for a job, mate. It looks like such a laugh. So yeah, I've got your top 10 here. I'll read it down. You've actually put numbers next to yours, so I'm going to read them in the order that you've put them on. Number 10 is Warhorse. Now, I only watched this for the first time last week. I have been nagged to death about watching this for ages. And I finally got a chance to watch it last night. What a movie. I mean, I'll be doing a proper sort of review of it later on, but I was absolutely blown away by it. I didn't think I would be, but I was. But I'll be talking about that one a bit later. That's number 10. Number 9, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I'm assuming this is the original Wes Craven version from 84, or is it 85? I mean, what a movie. It was Wes Craven's, I think it was one of his biggest movies to date. I think all he'd had up until then was stuff like The Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left, that kind of thing. But this one was just something else. I think it scared pretty much the whole world when it first came out. It was an original idea, something that Hollywood and horror movies are sadly lacking nowadays. But at the time, we'd never seen anything quite like that. And obviously it spawned many sequels, probably 7 or 8. I actually watched most of them over a sort of an 8-week period, probably a couple of months back. Really enjoyed them. I think the best ones were definitely, the original is by far the best, as is usual. I quite enjoyed the second one. I would think the third one, I really enjoyed Dream Warriors. I thought that was absolutely superb. And there's a reason for that. When that actually came out, I was working in a video library at the time, video shop. And when that movie came out, myself and the rest of the staff got invited to a premiere at a cinema in Birmingham, which we attended. I'll never forget that night. It was a brilliant night, and that was the first time I'd ever seen Dream Warriors, and again, just totally blew me away. Brilliant movie, loved it, still love it now. I think they ran out of steam a bit after that. I believe I only got as far as the Dream Master. I think that was the last one I watched. I believe I've got probably 2 or 3 left to watch. I think Dream Child is one, New Nightmare is another, and I'm sure there's another one in there as well. So I didn't actually quite finish them, but to be honest, I was starting to get a bit bored with them, so I will finish them at some point just to say that I've actually seen them. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, brilliant choice. Number 8, Reservoir Dogs. Excellent debut from Quentin Tarantino. I love his movies. I think Reservoir Dogs is by far my favourite. I did enjoy Pulp Fiction. Django was just mad. I haven't seen Hateful Eight yet, and I've got Jackie Brown on my watch list because I really want to see that one. But Reservoir Dogs to me was just absolutely brilliant. The script was superb. There was a lot of hoo-ha at the time about the violence, But when you watch it, a lot of the violence takes place off screen. I remember there was a huge thing about the ear cutting scene, and I was a little bit afraid of it when I first watched it, and then I suddenly realised they're not actually showing you. And this was the beauty of it, is that most of the violence happened off screen. All you saw was pretty much the aftermath. But yeah, superb film. What I'd recommend, Rick, actually, is Quentin Tarantino's new book. I believe it's called Cinema. Excuse me a sec. I'm going to have a look on my Audible list because I've actually got it on there. Just bear with me a second, and I'll tell you what it's called. I think it's called Cinema Spectacular or something like that. But I've listened to the first few pages of it, and it is absolutely brilliant. It's basically his thoughts on Hollywood, on movies, mostly from sort of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which are the movies that he grew up with. Just bear with me. I'm just bringing up my Audible list. It's all on my phone, you see. Here we go. Cinema Speculation by Quentin Tarantino. It's on Audible, and it's about 10 hours, 9 minutes long, but it's also available on paperback. And from what I've listened to so far, I reckon you would really, really enjoy it. And you would also enjoy, I'm sure, the podcast that he does. He does a podcast called Video Archives with a friend of his. They both used to run a video library in the 80s, and when the company went into liquidation, they bought the entire stock of the shop, put it into storage, and they are now working their way through all these old video cassettes. And it is just a brilliant listen. The two guys, I can't remember his mate's name, Roger Avery, that's right. They work their way through these two. You know what? They've got such an encyclopedic knowledge of movies, both of them. I could listen to either of them for hours. They've also had Eli Roth, the director, horror director, as a guest on there, talking about giallo films, Italian horror films, movies like, well, not Italian horror films, but American horror films that were inspired by giallo films, stuff like Dressed to Kill, The Eyes of Laura Mars. Highly recommended, Rick. If you like Tarantino's work, definitely check that book out, and absolutely check the podcast out. I listen to it whenever a new one drops. So yeah. Number 7, Hacksaw Ridge. This is on my watch list, and this was on somebody else's top 10. And I've taken that one off their list, grabbed myself a copy. I haven't watched it yet. No surprise to anybody, but I will be watching that one. I believe it's to do with, is it a conscientious objector who's basically against war? Is he a medic or something like that? I don't know very much about it, but it comes highly recommended, so I will be taking that one in. Number 6, Die Hard, the ultimate Christmas movie. I don't care what anybody says. It is a Christmas movie. I think somebody mentioned Lethal Weapon was as well, but I'm not really sure about that one. But Die Hard, what a brilliant movie. Loved it. I think I talked about this one last week. It was one of those movies that I rented on VHS, basically because there were no other films in the library at the time that I'd not seen. So I thought I'll try Die Hard, and absolutely loved it. Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. Oh, God. To me, it's not Christmas until you've seen Hans Gruber falling off the Nakatomi Tower. Is it Nakatomi Tower? Something like that. Nakatomi. So yeah, absolutely Die Hard. So, and I do enjoy the sequel as well. Die Hard 2 was brilliant. I think I've seen the third one. Is that the one with Jeremy Irons as Hans Gruber's brother? Yeah, seen that one. I've not seen the other two. I think there are another two, and I've not seen those yet. So, number 5, Rambo 4. I saw a Rambo film not too long back, probably 3-4 months ago. It was the one where his niece got kidnapped by a Mexican cartel, and he went down there to basically sort them out. Brilliant movie, violent as hell, really, really nasty. But yeah, I've heard there's another Rambo film that leaves that one standing as far as violence goes. I can't remember which one it is. Is that the one that you've listed here? Is that Rambo 4? Not sure, but I've definitely watched one of the Rambo films. You could probably tell me which one I've actually seen. Number 4, Conjuring Part 2. I love the Conjuring movies. I did enjoy the first one, but I enjoyed the second one more. And I think it would. I think it was because it felt a bit more sort of homegrown. It was to do with the Enfield haunting, wasn't it? In England, London. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. Eeriest part of it to me was the tall guy, the tall thin man. Wow, that haunts me to this day, that one. But yeah, I did enjoy The Conjuring Part 2 more than The Conjuring. But I haven't seen, there's a third one out now, isn't there? The Devil Made Me Do It or something like that. Not seen that one at all. I've not heard much about it, which basically tells me that it's probably not that good. Um, but I probably will take it in at some point. Number 3, The Exorcist. God, what can I say about The Exorcist that hasn't already been said? The reputation for The Exorcist got over here way before the movie did. People were pretty much terrified of it before they'd even seen it. But it's an absolute classic. It really, really is. They are now apparently rebooting it. Why? Why would you want to do that? This is a classic movie that there is no way you're going to make it any better. There really isn't. And if you're just going to use that old excuse if we want to introduce it to a new audience, well, just show them the old one. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's as disturbing as hell. That's actually coming up in a list that I've got a little bit later on, actually. So I'll talk a bit more about that one then. But The Exorcist, brilliant choice, but why they want to reboot it, I don't know. Number 2, Pulp Fiction. I would say that's probably my second favourite Tarantino film. John Travolta made one hell of a comeback with that. Samuel L. Jackson was superb. Bruce Willis was good. Uma Thurman, superb. Just a really good action, drama, typical Tarantino movie. Can't go wrong with it. And number 1, Terminator 2. I saw this, years and years ago. Loved it. I mean, it's one of those movies, especially effects-wise, it broke the mould. Because I think that was the first time we'd seen sort of computer-generated imagery and stuff like that, and it was so impressive back then. I mean, they're 2 a penny now. You don't think anything of it, but back then, the special effects were just the best I think that we'd pretty much ever seen. So that's a good choice for number 1. I don't know about the others. I don't know whether you've seen the others, Rick. Is it Rise of the Machines and it's all that lot? I think I saw one of them. I don't know whether it was Rise of the Machines or one of the other sequels, but I can't say I was overly impressed. I think it was the one with Christian Bale in it. But I honestly can't say it did much for me at all. So, right, that's Rick's list. Thanks ever so much for that, mate. Much appreciated. Good mix on there. Right, I've got a little list of my own here. I've got 5 discs. And these are five movies that I still find... I wouldn't say deeply disturbing, but a little bit worrying. I'll start with this one, Last House on the Left. I think I mentioned this one earlier when we were talking about Elm Street. This, to me, is a deeply, deeply unpleasant film. It was on the banned list for years. It was Wes Craven's debut movie. You could definitely see in which direction he was going as far as making movies goes. But this was just horrible. They remade it not too long back, probably about 10 years back. And I shied away from that one for quite a while. And I thought, just give it a go. It can't be any worse than the original. And it was actually quite good. It wasn't bad. I think if Wes Craven had made Last House on the Left sort of 10 years ago, it would have looked something like that. It wasn't bad. But this one, I can't remember much of what it's about. I just remember watching this and it left a really, really unpleasant taste after I'd watched it. The rape scene was just horrendous. The murders, the brutality, the whole thing was horrible. I have got it here on Blu-ray and I don't honestly know why I bought it because I've probably got no intention of watching it, but there are a lot of extras on here, like documentaries that I would be interested in watching, so I will take those in. But as for actually watching the film again, I don't know. It's one of those that I would have to be in the mood for, but it's a nasty piece without a doubt. Next one is a British movie. If you were around in 1979, you could not avoid movies like Scum, Quadrophenia, McVicar, basically brutal British movies. And this was probably one of the worst. I remember going to see this at Burton Odeon and pretty much coming out traumatised. It was based on a TV play set in a Borstal. Now, the TV play was banned before it was even screened. It only got released on DVD for the first time probably about 15 years ago, something like that. So it had remained pretty much unseen. But this movie version knocked the TV version into a cocked hat without a doubt. It was just, this is one of the most brutal, nasty depictions of Borstal life that you could ever wish to see. I mean, anybody that was considering any kind of a career outside of the law, if they were under sort of 18 or 19, this would absolutely have put them off. And I did kind of watch it recently. Sorry, the dog's wandering about. I can hear a little bell tinkling away. Yeah, anybody that was thinking of a career outside of the law of a certain age would definitely be put off by this. It is an absolutely horrendous film. Well worth watching, but yeah, be prepared for some real nasty stuff going off in that one. Next one. This is pretty much in the same vein, but American, a US movie from 1978, Midnight Express. This is the movie that put me off going to Turkey for life. I don't think I saw this at the pictures when it first came out. I think I was just too young to see it. But when I did watch it, it is easily one of the most brutal American movies that I've ever seen. It's one of those films that I watch now and I always come away from it feeling really, really depressed. Obviously, it's set in a Turkish jail. It's to do with an American student who tries to smuggle drugs out of Turkey, gets caught and gets slung in a Turkish jail. And basically it takes him, I'm not going to spoil it if you've not seen it, but believe me, if brutality is your thing, then you would really, really enjoy this. But it's a true story as well. The guy's name was Billy Hayes. It's a name you never forget once you've seen the movie. But again, the Turkish jail, it is just an absolute hellhole. Really, really horrible. The guards are brutal. It's just awful. It's a cracking movie. I believe it won Oscars. Yeah, winner of 2 Academy Awards, and I think one of them was for Best Picture. That would have been 1978. And it's also got a marvellous score by I think it's Giorgio Moroder, actually, the score for this. Yeah, and it was directed by Alan Parker, who also did the wonderful Bugsy Malone. This is a world away from that. But yeah, if you like prison movies like McVicar, possibly Scum, that kind of thing, you won't go wrong with this. It's an absolutely marvellous movie. It's just very dark, very bleak. There is nothing good in it at all. So yeah, worth a look. Next one, we've talked about this one. The Exorcist. Like I said earlier, the reputation for this movie came over way before the film did. I was terrified of this movie before I even saw it. I was way too young to see it at the cinema, but I knew people that had seen it, and they told me that it was nasty as hell. The first time I saw it, it's another of those movies that you come away feeling deeply, deeply unsettled. Mostly about the fact that it's the main sort of character in this is a young girl, and the things that they're making her do and say is just completely wrong on every level. But it's brilliantly done. It's based on a book by William Peter Blatty, directed by William Friedkin. Again, it's one of those movies that once you see it, you will never, ever forget this. There are probably one stroke, possibly 2 scenes that I still have real trouble with. And the whole sort of tone of the movie is just, it's horrible. It really is. It's a classic, and I would definitely watch it again. But it does leave you with a real sense of sort of you know, not really enjoyed that. They are, as I've said, rebooting it. I don't know why. They've also announced that the first movie is going to be part of a trilogy. Why? Judging by what they've done with Halloween, as I've said before, the first Halloween of 2018 was absolutely superb. Halloween Kills was okay. Halloween Ends was not bad, not bad at all. But I think they could have left it. I think somebody else said they could have done Halloween 2018 and probably incorporated Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends into that, done a 2 hour movie and wrapped the whole thing up there, but they didn't. That's probably what they should have done. And I get the feeling that's what they're going to do with this. I mean, it may be good when they do it, you know, but will it compare to this? Of course it won't. Can they replicate the controversy that surrounded this when it came out? Of course they can't. It's a different world. I mean, you get a lot of people now, young people, who've watched this and say that they find it funny. The last thing I find The Exorcist is funny, but that's today's sensibilities. People are just desensitized to all this sort of stuff now. And like I always say, you have to go back. This is nearly 50 years now to understand what a scary piece this was back then, but in 1973. And don't forget, it was banned for several years as well. I think it only came out sort of mid-90s, but it was banned for years. You couldn't get it. But The Exorcist, deeply unsettling. My number one, this is a movie that you may not have heard of. I watched this for the first time probably about a year or two ago, and I found it really, really unsettling, really unnerving. It's called Dark Skies. It's to do with alien abduction. I don't know. I know exactly what it is that worries me about it. I've always had a real fear of sort of UFOs and stuff like that. I find them fascinating, don't get me wrong, but the thought of one actually landing and all that sort of stuff, and the thought that these things can actually come into your home and literally take you away, to me is terrifying. There was a movie starring Christopher Walken some years back called Communion, which was based around the same sort of subject, and that had pretty much the same effect on me. But this one, I find this one really, really eerie. There's another movie called Extraterrestrial, which is, again, the same kind of thing, but this is the one to watch. There was also a found footage movie. I think it was one of the first found footage movie called the McPherson Tapes. And that was a very similar thing to that, but it was done in the found footage style. I found that very unnerving as well. But to me, I watch this and it just creeps me out every time I watch it. So, I mean, if you like your horror, not gory, not bloody or anything like that, if you like it just so it gets up here and it won't go, I would highly recommend you take a look at this one. That's called Dark Skies. Right, let's see. Bin it or keep it for this week. Here we go. Warhorse. I have been nagged to death to watch this for ages, and I am so glad that I finally got round to watching it. What a movie. Directed by Steven Spielberg. I didn't realise that. I knew it had something to do with it, but I didn't realise he actually directed it. It is just an amazing movie if you've never seen it. It's basically about the bond between a boy and his horse. They get separated during, due to World War One, where the horse is sent to France into the trenches and all that sort of thing. The boy goes to look for him. It is one of the most heartbreaking stories, and one of the reasons I put off watching it was because I thought there was going to be a lot of animal cruelty in it and all that sort of thing. I wouldn't say there's animal cruelty in it, but there's a lot of scenes where the horse is what you would class as a bit distressed, which you bloody would be. Anybody would be over there. But if you've not seen this, I highly recommend it. It's a long film. It's about 2.5 hours, but it is worth every minute of it. So yeah, highly recommended. That is definitely a keeper. Absolutely a keeper, without a doubt. And I'm so glad that you nagged me to hell to watch this, Jason. I'm really glad that you did, mate. So that's a keeper. Soundtrack of the week very quickly before I have to go. A Clockwork Orange. I first heard this, the soundtrack, playing in a video library in Burton. I walked in, recognised it straight away, and said to the girl behind the counter, "That's Clockwork Orange, isn't it?" And she says, "Yeah, it's my favourite film ever." I said, "Is that the soundtrack?" She says, "Yeah." So I eventually went and ordered this. It's got basically, as you can see, all the pieces of music from the film. You've got some classical in there. You've got the main title, which is unmistakable the first time you hear it. You don't ever forget that. So yeah, that's my soundtrack for this week. I'm sorry if this all seems a bit rushed, folks. My dog is driving me nuts. I think she wants to go out, and I didn't want to leave you all hanging here. So I'll disappear for now. I'll be back again tomorrow with obviously a roundup of what's been happening on the Facebook group. What I will say very quickly is if anybody's got any top 10s that they want to message over to me, please feel free. I've got probably about 2 left. I put a little thing on Facebook last week, and I've had a few replies to that. So, but I could definitely do with more. So, anybody that's got a top 10 movie list that they want me to talk about, preferably on a day when I'm not feeling quite so rushed because of my little pooch down here, please feel free to mail them over. Doesn't matter how many you put down. Doesn't have to be a top 10. They don't have to be in any particular order. If you can't narrow it down to top 10. Just put some honourable mentions in there of movies that would have made it onto the list but didn't quite. So, right, thanks ever so much for joining me, folks. My sincere apologies for the rush on this one. I think you could tell that I was breaking into a gallop about halfway through. So, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and also subscribe. I would really, really appreciate that. Thanks ever so much for joining me, folks, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Take care. Ta-da.